Hi, welcome to this week's episode of On the Level Leadership, and this week we're speaking about micromanagement. So this week we're talking about micromanagement. I'd actually like to put a question out to the audience today. When does this happen in your organization, and what are the ramifications of micromanagement? And is that your style of managing? Do you like to oversee all the details of a project or an initiative, or are you happy to let people just do their jobs and make things happen? Well, the reason why I ask this question is because I routinely see, whether it's in the organization I'm in now or in the past, I've seen where micromanagement's been a very disabling leadership practice. Coos and Posner talks quite a bit about enabling others to act, and I've talked about that in previous vlogs, and I'll link down below or in the corners as to the last one. I talked about enabling others to act, where we empower employees, or want to empower employees to be able to make decisions at the very lowest levels. So micromanagement, from my perspective, at least when I've been micromanaged in my history as an employee, I have found it very disabling and very demotivating, because you're not allowing that individual to express their own leadership. Reframing Organizations is a book that by Bowman and Deal, and I've got the link down below for those that are interested in this textbook. It talks about reframing organizations, and there's a number of various topics that they talk about in here. But one of the topics they talk about is encouraging autonomy and participation. And a direct quote they state in here is that, treated like children, employees will behave accordingly. It's kind of what I've said before in previous vlogs. People will give you what you expect of them. So if you expect strong leadership and the ability to think on their feet, guess what? That's what you're going to get. If you expect the best, Lee Cockrell, who wrote the magic book that I have listed before in previous vlogs as well, who was the VP of operations for Walt Disney World for 20 some odd years, he also had very high expectations of his staff. And really, from the book at least, the perspective is that he didn't micromanage. His idea was to just do touch bases with his direct reports to talk about things like projects and profits and people and so on, the 4 Ps, I believe it was. And he really wanted to talk about those things so he could get a grasp of how things were moving, or what the status of a project was. His goal was not to micromanage the actual work, though. That work was supposed to be done by the experts in the field that were hired to do the work. So how do you keep yourself from micromanaging as a manager? If you are new to a role and a bit insecure about the material that you're managing or overseeing, it may be tempting to micromanage as a means of trying to learn. But I think the approach that you need to come to the table with new employees is to say, hey, I don't know much about this material. I'm going to depend on your expertise to provide some support and to provide the right advice, and I'm going to trust that that's the advice that I should follow. Again, it has to do with trust, enabling trust. We talked about this in tons of ways between Coos and Posner, between Senge talking about learning organizations that are trustworthy, to even Bowman and Deal. The idea here is to allow employees to really give the best of themselves so that they can give you the best product or the best service possible. So how does micromanagement affect your organization, and where have you seen it in your organization? I know from my perspective it is a difficult thing to manage as an employee, because I know for myself personally, my leadership style is very hands-off. I tend to I expect that my employees are going to give me the best of what they have to offer. And to make sure that I get what I need from a project, I just try to hire the right people for the job, and you don't need to micromanage the right employees. So I think that's kind of part of the equation, is making sure that you get the right person for the job, regardless of gender, regardless of whatever. You need to make sure that you have the right person for the job. And then from there, let them do what they do best, which is their expertise. And I think if you do that, you will get the positive response in your morale within the organization. I'd be very interested in hearing your perspectives around how micromanagement or controlling of employees has affected the morale. I've seen direct decreases in morale in organizations that have applied these kinds of principles. Sometimes new change managers coming in want to get a handle of the finances or want to understand the design of the organization, and sometimes in doing so they will sometimes micromanage decision making because they're trying to get a grasp of things. If that lasts for any length of time, though, I find the morale tends to really plummet because people feel less empowered to make decisions at their level and are unable to really effectively present the leadership that they have in their daily work lives. And so I think for me, a micromanagement style might have its purpose in terms of directing a staffer who maybe isn't coping well with the work environment or on a project or what have you. It may be, rather than calling it micromanagement, maybe it's more of a form of mentoring that would be useful for an employee that's struggling. But overall, applying that blanket micromanagement style across the board, across your organization, could be really disabling. And I actually think it would actually decrease your overall productivity in the organization as well. So it might be worthwhile kind of looking into how you can enable others more effectively within the organization to increase your morale, especially if you're finding that folks are really not liking the leadership style of wanting to know every little detail about every little project. Cruz and Posner are very clear about the fact that enabling others is really where it's at, and real leaders or true leaders rather than managers. So managers micromanage, in my opinion. Leaders enable others to be able to do their job properly. We got somebody mulching their leaves in the background. Anyway, moving right along. So really, at the end of the day, don't do it. Don't micromanage your staff. Find ways to enable others. Read the chapter on Cruz and Posner if you're really not sure on how to do that. Watch my vlog on how to enable others, and that'll help you get started in your process. But generally speaking, it's not good practice. Really, the idea is to lead people to strengthen their own capacity, and enabling others also means making sure they have the right skill set so that you don't have to micromanage them, right? Is making sure that they have the right training, or frankly, that you have the right people at the table. Because if you have the right skill set, who have the right training and have the right mindset for the job, you really don't have to micromanage them because they are the stars and they will show their true colors to you as you trust them to do the job that they've been hired to do. When I feel empowered, I want to give more to the organization. I want to lead in a more effective way. I feel energy in the work that I do. When I feel micromanaged or disabled in my decision making or my ability to move projects forward, I don't feel successful. Those small wins are harder to get, and I just feel demotivated as an employee. So I think, really assess your leadership style very carefully. And if you're a micromanager, if you're somebody who likes a lot of detail and needs reports on a daily basis from your employees, I would challenge you to challenge that thinking. And I would challenge you to look at alternative ways of empowering your staff while still making yourself get the information that you require in order to brief up the line, or in order for you to feel a level of comfort that things are progressing well within your organization. So that's it for this week. Short and sweet. It's the issue of micromanagement. I'd be curious to see how, whether you micromanage yourself and how this has affected or not affected your organization. Does your organization empower people on a routine basis? What is your culture like where you work? I'd be very curious to hear in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching this week's episode of On the Level Leadership. If you like these little weekly tidbits, feel free to subscribe down below and press the bell notification, and you'll be notified as soon as a video is uploaded. Thanks again for watching. See you next week.